If you ask Dave Anderson what he does for a living, he'll probably tell you he's retired, but that's not entirely true. While he did leave his last full-time job at Amazon back in 2020, he still writes a weekly newsletter on Substack about tech leadership. And even though he only works on the newsletter part-time, it currently has over 2,000 paid subscribers. It turns out a lot of people want to tap into his insights gleaned from working for 20 years in the tech industry, including over 10 at Amazon. In a recent interview, Dave discussed the newsletter's origin story, how it found its audience, and why he doesn't have any ambitions to scale it into a larger media company. Hello, I'm Simon Owens, and this is The Business of Content, the show about how publishers create, distribute, and monetize their digital content. If you'd like to listen to an audio version of this interview, subscribe to The Business of Content wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're a longtime fan of this show, you're probably aware that it's not monetized with ads. I'm entirely reliant on paid subscriptions to my Substack newsletter to fund this content. Subscribers get access to a deep archive of interviews with the world's most successful media entrepreneurs. They also get to book a half-hour introductory Zoom call with me. Go to simonowens.substack.com. That's simonowens.substack.com. Or just Google the words Simon Owens and newsletter. Okay, let's jump into the interview. Hey Dave, thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
So in our email exchange, you refer to yourself as retired, which is kind of funny because you run a newsletter that generates over $200,000 in revenue. So let's start, before we talk about the newsletter, let's just talk about like what you were doing before then. I was looking at your LinkedIn. Looks like you had a very long career at Amazon along with a few other stops along the way. What were you doing? What's your kind of background?
Yeah, I worked in the Midwest as a software engineer and then manager of software engineering teams. And then I moved to Amazon in 2007. And Amazon worked out really well for me. It was the right kind of thing for my personality and right time, place to go. So I was at Amazon for about 12 years, and it worked out really well. Essentially, my wife and I both worked there. We saved up money. We invested enough that many years ago, I could tell, like, retirement's approaching. I pay attention to money. We don't spend a lot. And so with things invested, I was enjoying my career and growing as I became a director at Amazon, but I didn't want to do that until I was 65. And so I had an opportunity as we got closer and closer to like, okay, we have enough money. Like, what do you work for if you have enough money that you can do this the rest of your life, like your current living expenses? Jeff Bezos started a number of nonprofits. One of them was Bezos Academy, which is a nonprofit for opening free preschools across the country. And so I helped them open the first school. I essentially quit Amazon and just moved over to his nonprofit. And that was like my off-ramp for working life. I did that for about a year and then hired my replacement. And I thought, my dream actually in life.
Before we get to that, so when you were at Amazon, you worked at like various divisions within the company. It wasn't just like the same thing. What were some of the different parts of Amazon that you worked at?
It was, for anyone in tech, it's like a dream opportunity, as in, so I worked in global payments, which is like back-end payment processing stuff and a lot of security, encryption, cryptography stuff. Then I moved over to Marketplace, which is like the third-party selling group. So that was about 2 years in payments. Third-party selling group, which is about people selling their physical products through Amazon. And so I helped run a lot of the like interactions with sellers and Amazon systems. I did that for about 4 years. And then I briefly left and went to Facebook. Didn't like it. As I kept telling them, like, hey, man, I like Amazon. So if this doesn't work out, I'm going back. So I went to AWS at Amazon, like really, really low level, super high volume stuff inside of AWS networking. Then I moved over to the devices group. So physical devices we sell, like Amazon's tablets and stuff. I ran the technology for kids tablets. So Amazon has like kids tablets that they sell with like games and books and stuff. And so did that for a few years. And then briefly, before I left Amazon, I moved over to the video game group, where we were working on video game publishing. So very, very diverse set of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, even though you were working for the same company, you got like a very diverse background in terms of just
fantastic.
Understanding marketplaces, understanding cloud computing, understanding like actual physical products, and then understanding
mobile
video games. And you were
business customers, consumer customers, business customers. It was across the board. It was such a good idea. I'm like, look back on it, I'm like, that was brilliant. Like, to move between very, very different groups. If anyone has that kind of opportunity, it's great.
And like, you were leading relatively large teams in a lot of these various divisions.
I started off with like 6 people as like a junior manager, but by the end I was leading 150 plus people teams.
And I guess like Amazon is one of those companies that a lot of business schools and business podcasts and stuff like study, because it has its own kind of unique business philosophies. It's kind of like Netflix in that way. And so you were kind of, and this kind of, ties into what you're doing now, is like you learned all these kind of leadership and management like type of things, like almost some of the famous quips about, what's the rotating door versus closed door?
Two-way doors versus one-way doors is like one of those. There are a few key concepts that definitely are very Amazon, like deep in Amazon, which is like two-way doors versus one-way doors, which is about like how reversible are decisions, and the idea being very reversible decisions you make super fast, don't waste any time on them, and then decisions that you can't go back on, that's where you spend your effort. And then like an ownership culture, Amazon has this big thing about like as low as possible in the management hierarchy should be, decisions should be made. So pretty big decisions got made by pretty junior people. It's just another thing that they work hard on. It makes you move faster by just saying like, if the engineer has an opinion, just do your opinion and move on. And so there's a lot of things I think that Amazon does well. And so I like to, that's what I ended up doing. Was I was writing while working at Amazon, writing posts once in a while, which turned out to be very popular. Just sharing knowledge that I had like while working there. I just like writing. And so they became popular, and I was like, hey, people like to hear about this kind of stuff. So
where were you publishing them? Like Medium or something?
Mostly LinkedIn and Medium. Yeah. I think I posted on the first major one was on LinkedIn, and it blew up. And so I moved it over to Medium, and I posted some things on Medium as well.
And was like did the company didn't care if you were publishing these types of posts and stuff like that?
It's sort of funny. Like I don't think so the first post I had was like how to interview at Amazon. It was essentially so I'd written it for literally friends and family. Like I knew enough people who wanted to interview there that I kept writing these emails, and so I would copy paste and make it better and better, saying like, here's all the things you need to know before interviewing to get a job. And I thought, like this is getting pretty good. And like I was literally a Saturday morning, my wife and like was gone, and I'm like, hey, I have a day available. I should write this up as like a post and share it with everyone. So no one, a couple people said, hey, you're sort of ruining our interview process by giving away the secrets, but 99% of people were thrilled about it. Like, this is awesome. I just gave it to my friends and family. Like, I've been meaning to write that, and you finally did it for me. And was sort of more funny and surprising was tons of recruiters started sending it, Amazon recruiters started sending it to their candidates saying, hey, this is how you prepare. Read this guy's article. So flatteringly, I mean, the people still do it. Like, this is, I don't know if it's quite 10 years yet since I wrote the first version of this thing, but it was still getting sent last I checked by a lot of people.
So you worked there, and then you went to go work for, well, like in terms of these like leadership principles, were there like like how were these leaderships disseminated, like principles disseminated through the company?
That's another thing that they just do really, really well. Like, I mean, beyond having leadership principles, which is good, like almost every company has their guiding principles, leadership principles, like whatever they call them, like our 5 tenets of something. And at almost every other company I've heard of, everyone ignores them. So Amazon, I don't know if it was done purposefully or just the way Jeff Bezos' brain works, but if you promote someone, you reference the leadership principles 100 times in their promotion document. If you're in a meeting about a project, you reference the leadership principles in why we should do the project. If you are using these every day, all day long in every official meeting, because that's just the way people interacted about anything official. And so that's how you learn the leadership principles really quickly, was beyond like being sent in your introduction, like, you've been hired, you should know the Amazon leadership principles. But they were used every day. And like when your promotion documents and your ratings are literally like, how did they do on the leadership principles? you start to really, really think in the way that Amazon wants you to. And so I think they're like one of the biggest aspects of why they were successful.
Yeah. But also Amazon was also known as a company that people kind of grinded out of in some ways. So is it like, what was that dynamic? Is it was trying to like make sure that people were culture? I mean, I know that term culture fit has become like a loaded term, but that it's like, it's specifically for finding like people like you that kind of thrive in that environment.
Well, I think for most things, like as humans, most things that we do particularly well is also our weakness. Like if you think about like your super strengths, like I make decisions really quickly. I always have. I hate to sit there and deliberate on anything. Like, want to go to a restaurant, I will pick that restaurant within 5 seconds because I hate to think about things. But that's also a weakness. Like, I don't know how many times at Amazon I did make a decision too fast, and people are like, dude, like you could have waited like 5 minutes and talked about it a bit more. And I'm like, I can't stand to talk. So at Amazon, one of the things that they do really well is let people manage their own workload and their time and like what they're going to work on. Like, it's very, very open-ended. You screw yourself over, or you are successful because you have a ton of personal agency, right? Like, do whatever you want when you want. Work 12 hours, work 5. Like, you're mostly going to get in trouble by not doing enough, and you're mostly going to get rewarded by doing a lot. Now, what does that mean? It means anyone who can't say no, who doesn't have a good way of saying, I don't have time to do that right now. I do have time to do this, but I'm not going to do that and that. And I am going to go home at 6. I know that there's 17 things left undone. Too bad for you. I'm leaving for the day. That's where I think most of Amazon's burnout culture comes from. And it's not fake. It really does burn some people out. But I think most of the time that I saw it, at least, it was self-inflicted. Like it was very much. I literally had people on my teams burning out, where I met with them over and over again. Sometimes like it's 6 p.m. They're sitting there. I know they were there at 8 a.m. and I'm like, dude, you have to go home. I'm going home. Please go home. And like, I have like 2 more things to do. I'm like, I am your manager. I'm telling you, you don't have to do it. And they're like, but it has to be done. They get burned out. Like it just happens. So there's that. And then there's also like, if you read the leadership principles, I repeatedly joked, like you'll notice a lack of empathy is not listed. Like our write a lot is listed, and bias for action and delivering results for people. And like, there's a lot of things about getting work done. There's not like are nice to your coworkers. That's not a thing. And so there was, so when I was at Facebook as like a comparable example, there was this meeting where this really junior engineer had this horrible idea. And I don't remember what it was, but it was like obviously a terrible idea. Like there should be a like and a dislike button on Facebook, and there should be a like make fun of someone button. And everyone's like, oh, very interesting, very interesting. And I looked around the room like I was absolutely crazy. This was right after I joined, pretty much. And I'm like, I'm so confused. Like, why is everyone nodding along? This is obviously stupid. And so I in my mind, very politely said, like, won't this cause a lot of problems because of X and Y? And I got like shushed by people like, dude, this is very good. Thank you very much for your time, engineer. And we leave the room and I'm told like, you can't like rub people the wrong way by telling them their ideas are bad. That's mean. And I was just shocked. Because at Amazon, there's a focus on being right. And like, you have to have a little bit of a thick skin because you present your idea and someone might read it and say, yeah, I don't think this is going to work at all. And I'm like, if you're not ready for it, it's just like, ow, dude, I spent 6 hours writing the document and you spent 5 minutes reading it and you're like, this isn't going to work. This is pretty bad. But I don't, for 90% of people, it didn't come from a place of meanness. It just came from a place of like, we have half an hour for this meeting. If I can get 20 of these minutes back, because I don't need to sit here for half an hour on this dumb idea, I'd like to go back to my office and work on things. So, yeah. So
you leave in what year did you go to work for the nonprofit?
Pretty sure it was 2020, like February or March, because it was this really funny period of Amazon was moving remote because of COVID hitting. As I left Amazon and moved over to Bezos Academy, who were saying like, we don't know how to interview people remotely. So we sort of like met in person right at the beginning of like, maybe we shouldn't be meeting in person, but we met in like empty downtown. It was like a ghost town. And so I was there for about a year.
You were at Bezos Academy for a year.
Yeah. And
so you decide to, you have enough money in the bank, you have investments, you're going to retire. Had you been continuing to write on like Medium all this time?
Yeah, it was like Amazon's a busy place. You don't have a ton of time to do like I have family. We do hiking. We do trail run. Like there's all sorts of activities we do. So I was writing every few months, like an article here or there, and they did really well on LinkedIn. Like people paid attention, and I also have like as a complete side thing, I write the beginnings of novels regularly. I have like 15 novels I've started, and I work on them once in a while. I like this idea of someday publishing like fiction, and so I would write once in a while, and it was just always in the back of my head was, I will be a writer someday. Like that's going to be my thing. And so as I was, Bezos Academy thing was always going to be a temporary job. It was like it wasn't going to pay anywhere near what Amazon paid. It was just a like, sure, I'll help out the world and do something nice. But my general plan was like, I'm going to be a writer. And so when I left, it was like, hey, how do I force myself to write regularly? Because that's definitely my biggest weakness is like, I'll write really hard for 2 days and then never do it again. Or not do it for 6 more months. And so I thought, well, okay, newsletter is the obvious answer. If I just have a schedule and I'm forced to publish on a schedule, that's how I'll force myself to write regularly. And it's been years now. It worked. Like it's like magic.
And so you chose Substack just because that was kind of like the default.
No, interestingly, I have a spreadsheet somewhere where I compared all the features. I started on Ghost, so that's the open source. Not quite free, but it's pretty close to free platform. And it had enough features that worked for me. And I was interested. So my vague idea, I would say the biggest thing was it'll be cheaper, fewer features, and it's open source. So theoretically, as a bit of a geek, I could make changes if I wanted to. Now, it turned out that that's probably a bad idea because tech people end up fiddling with software rather than actually writing. So I told myself shortly thereafter, like, you better not touch the code, leave it alone. You're here to write, not to code things. And so I was on Ghost for, gosh, I don't know how long, 2 years, a year and a half, something like that. I was on there for a little while. And then all of my peer writers, when I kept talking to them, were all on Substack. And so it was just almost everyone I talked to, everyone I interacted with was on Substack. And once in a while, you'd run into a feature or a whatever or a benefit that people on Substack had. And I was on the Substack newsletter just because I wanted to keep an eye on features. And they kept building new and more and more new things. And you start to get jealous. They have this cool feature. They have this other cool feature. I really like it. And so I started talking to Substack people and eventually moved over.
So when you were on Ghost in those early years, what were you? So what was your kind of writing cadence? What kind of content were you creating?
Yeah. So the type of content, my general idea was I want to write the kinds of things I wrote as a director at Amazon. So it's about career stuff at tech companies. So how do you get hired? How do you stay in your job? How do you not get fired? How do you get promoted? How do you do well? My general idea being it's like for software engineers, project managers. But I'd say as topics go, I'm more broad than narrow. I sort of jump around a lot. Sometimes I have here's how you do the coding interview for a software engineer. I mean, that's pretty specific. But then I'll flip over to as a senior manager, how do you move towards director? Well, that's specific, but for a completely different audience. I try to jump around enough that everyone who's subscribed will every other article will find something useful. But I started writing weekly a free article. I was like, every week I'm going to write one article. And it blew up really fast, like within 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah,
on Ghost.
Yeah.
What it actually blew up on was LinkedIn, because I posted on LinkedIn and I already had a good amount of following from my previous articles. And so it was just like almost immediately, it was like, day 3, I had 5,000 subscribers or something silly. It was just like, whoa, wait a second. Like
5,000 email subscribers?
Yeah. Yeah. It just like I think it was like I already had like, let's say 15,000 followers on LinkedIn or something. And it was just boom. Tons of subscribers, just much faster, obviously, than almost anyone starts their newsletter. It was just right away, tons of followers. And I was like, okay, this is immediately a thing. Like, this is definitely like an active live newsletter, whatever it was. It grew much faster than expected. And so I thought, okay, like this isn't just to like talk into the void quietly and like have everyone ignore me for a while and just practice writing. This is actually like a thing. I should do a paid newsletter. And part of that is also because I like fiddling with things. So I'm like, ooh, paid. Like you can set pricing and do marketing and you can do referrals and like all sorts of stuff. So I played with the settings, created a paid newsletter, and I started writing twice a week. One free article, one paid article. I just made it up. I read what a few people did. That's what some people did. And I decided, hey, that'll work for me. So I wrote that for something like 7 months or something, writing twice a week. And it felt like a lot. Like it takes a lot of time because I write fast. If I have an idea, I can write it in a few hours. I type really fast. I can just write really fast. But coming up with an idea and organizing the content just took longer than I sort of expected. And I kept thinking like, man, this is taking a good amount of my time. I'm supposed to be retired and I'm spending half my week writing. I'm spending 20 hours a week writing, which is dumb. So in my first year, as I headed into like the Christmas holidays, I told everyone I'm temporarily pausing the free newsletter. Like I have to keep doing paid because I have paid subscribers now. So I'm just going to stop that free newsletter for a few weeks while I visit family. And I stopped. And I was always looking at the graphs of paid and stuff. And I saw zero change in my paid growth. But I stopped doing the free newsletter. And I thought, well, that's like, wait a second. Like, why am I doing this free newsletter? Like half of my work is writing a newsletter that doesn't seem to be contributing growth. So I wrote like a few more free articles as a test, and I saw like no blips, no growth. Like I was watching, all the graphs and stuff. I'm like, okay, like no one who joins for free just flips to paid, or not noticeably on the graph of paid growth. I didn't see like anything. So I'm like, well, this is dumb now. So I just quietly stopped writing free articles and haven't done that for years. And so
now and we'll talk about this in a second, but like now you share, every article is for free, but you share a lot of it above the paywall. So people who are subscribed to the free can still see, a pretty huge chunk of the article. What, did Ghost have that functionality, or was it just at the very? Oh, it did. Okay, and were you doing that from early on? Like,
relatively early on, it was like I was trying to figure out like, because the obvious options for a paid newsletter is not even sent to the free list. But I just like intuitively thought that wouldn't work well because they wouldn't know what they're missing. You could send like just like the headline and essentially here is a paid article you can't see. And I thought, well, that's just rude, and people will hit spam button on me. And you could do like a few paragraphs. I'm like, that's still in the rude category of like, well, that's just dumb. Like no one wants a few paragraphs in an article. So I was like, how do I share enough of it, leaving the incentive to subscribe? And so I just ended up picking like, I'm just going to call 50% and just like, I'm going to put the thing in there. I don't write my articles in a way that like the punchlines at the bottom usually. I just, like here are 10 things you think about when you're trying to get hired at a company. Like, okay, I'll give 5 of them for free and 5 of them will be paid. Like that, if you like it enough, maybe you'll hit subscribe. So that's what I've been doing forever. I literally write the whole article. It all gets done. I do my editing, set the title and stuff, and then I'll scroll to approximately the middle. Like I look at my scroll bar, I'm like, okay, about there. And I'll look for like a section ending thing, and I'll just drop in the paywall there.
And you can get a lot of value from that, because like I have like people on Substack who write about like economics and stuff that's not really in my purview, so I'm not really justified to pay. I pay for a lot of content. Like I pay like thousands of dollars a year to subscribe to various things, and so it's hard for me to justify becoming a paid subscriber to yet another thing if it's not like vital to my work. And there are some writers on Substack who write about economics and public policy and stuff like that, where they'll share like the first 1,000 words, and I get value from reading those first 1,000 words, even if I don't convert into can't read the full article. Do you get the sense that your free subscribers are still getting a lot of value, even if I have
repeatedly had people tell me in your email, LinkedIn, that I've been a subscriber for years and I've always enjoyed like half your articles. And like for some people, and they even say like, and that's good enough. Like I read half the article, like your articles are pretty long, so I read half your article, it's good. And I move on. And I did and have gotten some messages from paid users, and I don't have a great way to track. I've tried looking at the stats, but I do have once in a while a message from a paid person saying like, I was a free subscriber for a year and a half, reading half your articles all the time, and then this article came up and I finally bit the bullet and paid, because I really wanted to read the rest of it. And that's what I really want, is like I got value out of free, and I was finally worn down and decided to pay for it because I like enough of the content. But yeah, no, I do the exact same thing. Someone gives out enough free content, I'm like, this is not my thing. I'm just curious, or I like your writing or whatever. So I'll read like, whatever they give out for free, and I don't have a strong incentive to do paid. Yeah.
So you were doing that for like 2 years, and then you moved over to Substack.
Yep.
What were some of the things about Substack, the features and stuff that like attracted you?
Yeah, and as a side note, if anyone like searches on my newsletter, you can actually find my post saying, "Here's why I moved to Substack," because I did spend a lot of time like writing up exactly what it was. But I would say like the biggest things was, Ghost is not it is a tool, not a platform. You don't like people log into Substack and read Substack newsletters. People read my newsletter through Ghost. But no one surfs Ghost. No one looks around. Like Ghost is a distributed. It's just part of like how they are, like what they are.
And a lot of people like that about Ghost. Like that's specifically
totally.
why. Yeah.
It's a sales point of Ghost, which is like you're not part of a monolith. You use our hosting platform, sort of like WordPress, right? You don't search. You just post on there. You use it. It can do a lot of cool things. Like Ghost is actually in some ways a lot more flexible than Substack because of just how it's built. You can make it more of like you don't have to send emails with Ghost. You can make it just a website, like just post your stuff, make your blog on Go. You can do pages and like a lot more editing. You can change your theme in like 100 different ways. It's pretty cool how flexible it is. If I was writing a website, I would really consider using Ghost just to do the website itself because it's a really nice way if you have a website with content. But with Substack, like as I kept talking to people and they're like, how's the free versus paid growing? I'm like, paid's working great. Free is sort of anemic. Like you just like have a lot of people out and a lot of people in, and they said, okay, like everyone on Substack is growing and getting a lot more free, and like over time that builds to a meaningful number that's useful. And so I thought, well, I could try this for a bit. I'm definitely curious. Like that's the biggest thing. It's about growth. Like you can write just about anywhere. And so what does the platform give you? It gives you growth. Like it has, you have content and then you have people paying for it. And Substack was offering a way to potentially get more audience.
And so you move over to it. And so like in what ways are you using Substack in the ways, like obviously they have a social network, they have Substack Notes, they have a chat feature. If you like, there's some Substacks that have really robust like message boards for their paid subscribers. Obviously now you can upload video, you can distribute podcasts. So what's kind of how are you using Substack other than just to send out one weekly newsletter? Yeah.
So I would say that's sort of funny and hits back to the like your first thing of like, so you say you're retired, but you write a newsletter. I haven't seen anyone else saying what I'm saying for like my philosophy, which is like, I want to spend as little time as possible for the most benefit. It sort of hits to like some of Amazon's frugality thing of like only do the things that are the very most valuable. I don't remember if I ever turned on chat even. Like I looked at it. I've seen how other people use it. I'm not convinced. I had a Discord briefly for my newsletter and I shut it down shortly afterwards because I decided it was going to be more work than benefit. I don't post podcasts because if I started a podcast, I feel like I would have to keep doing it, and that sounds like a lot of work. I tried making one video. I spent too much time editing it and trying to get all my ums out and stuff. I'm like, oh, this is dumb. I tried doing audio podcasts. I tried using a lot of their features. I write once a week and I send it out, and I use the scheduling feature so I can go on a vacation for 3 weeks and have all my posts scheduled to go out at the right time. And I am recommended by a bunch of big newsletters, so I get a whole lot of free recommendations every time I send out a newsletter. I just keep getting people to subscribe. And otherwise, I don't use a lot of their features. I think it's the platform exists. I'm on the leaderboards here or there, moving up or down based on whatever happens. And I use it to send out newsletters.
And so you're not spending time on like Substack Notes or anything like that?
Nope. I have posted once in a while. And that's more of not a... I mean, I tried a little bit just to see, like, does that do anything? But I think... I would guess, so the audience of Substack Notes, in large part, at the moment, is still Substack writers. And so if you look at Substack Notes, you'll see a lot of traffic on the whole, like, come join my newsletter and you can, I'll join yours, and give me a list of 15 newsletters you read. And like, I'm not like a...
You can get those to go away. I just, every time I see one of those, I mute that person, and then gradually it taught the algorithm that I don't want to see that content. Yeah.
I actually talked to the Substack people about this. I'm like, they kept asking me about like, how are you going to use Notes? And I'm like, well, until you get rid of the fact that Notes is about writing Substacks, that it won't work for me.
Yeah, if you work on like pruning who you're following and stuff like that, it does get better, I think. Yeah.
But my newsletter is a tech industry newsletter, and Substack is some small slice of it is tech industry. And so I think, and again, like I'm not a fan of what algorithms do to our media platforms, but in general, but if I post content on Substack or post it on LinkedIn, I mean, I have 50 something followers on LinkedIn. I get traffic, I get interactions. I can, if it goes viral, I get what works out to be, $5,000 a year raise from a viral post. Like that's the kind of like growth of like, woo, like, okay, kick butt. And I have never seen that from a Substack notes post. And again, like I'm very optimizing for where do I need to put my time investment. And if I write an article and then bits of LinkedIn content, my newsletter stays at a point where it pays off my living expenses. And that was totally like, it's a good place. Like I want to write regularly and I want money, but not more money than I'm getting. And so I like sort of like got to the point where I'm like, this is perfect. Now I'm going to see how little work I can put into this beyond the writing experience, which is what I wanted to do.
Yeah. And so it sounds like the only platform other than Substack that you're active on is LinkedIn.
Yep.
And
I did Twitter for a bit, or X, whatever. I did that for a little bit, and I pretty much shut down my usage. Same with Blue Sky and some of these other social media platforms. I've used them a bit and then stopped using them.
And so what are you doing on LinkedIn? Are you consistently posting there, or is it really just like cross-posting a link to the newsletter with like a few sentences just to tease it or something?
Yep. LinkedIn daily posts through Buffer. I sometimes would do it 5 days a week, sometimes 7. Right now I'm at 7 because I have enough content. I pre-write them. I'll sit down for like a few hours once every few weeks and just bang out content. And so sometimes I copy and paste from an article and grab like 3-4 paragraphs and say, essentially, if you want to read more, here's my article. And then sometimes I'll essentially rephrase it or write a short version. Like I'll glance at the article and be like, oh yeah, I remember that. And I type fast, like, and that saves. I've recently said like, my mind is blown by the fact that they don't have typing school in like grade schools or like for the most part elementary schools.
I'm not sure that's one-to-one. I'm a very fast typer but I'm a slow writer because I think it's less to do with typing speed and it's like how you agonize over like every sentence and stuff like that.
And so I don't, and like I've said to many people, like I assure you will find typos and grammar problems or like a thought that I started on and then I just forgot about and like moved on to a different thought. It happens, but if I can sit down for a few hours and write 40 bits of content, I now have a month plus of LinkedIn content, and I have it automatically scheduled for once a day at 6-something a.m., and it just keeps going out. A lot of them are mildly ignored. Every 7 to 10 posts goes viral enough that I can see a spike in paid subscribers. And that's my like sort of anti-attrition tool, which is to keep me at a good level of paid members.
And so like the LinkedIn post is like kind of those long, like mid-sized LinkedIn posts where it's like one sentence per paragraph. And it's like, if you like leadership insights like this, the link to my Substack in the comments, or like
I don't use any emojis. I hate the stupid emoji things. I understand like, or the weird fonts, like where they change the font in some mysterious way. I don't do any of that. And I would say that most of my paragraphs are a few paragraphs, but actually like, my writing style for my newsletter is the same as my LinkedIn. So, 1, 2, 3, 4. I do have shorter paragraphs, but that's how I write everywhere. I mean, I just, long paragraphs, I have trouble following with my eyes. I like shorter paragraphs for reading. But no, I'll do 3-4 sentences. I'll do full thoughts. And sort of like what I do with my posts, but with the free section, I don't try... in fact, I've told people this a lot for LinkedIn is you can't give partial thoughts and say, if you want to essentially get the punchline, you have to read my newsletter. You really want to give the complete thought because people won't share otherwise. And so I do my best to say, like, if you want to get hired, here are the 3 most important things, and I will actually give the information. Like I will just give it from the newsletter. Sometimes it's like, if my article's like the 10 things you should know about, I keep using these lists sometimes, but they're easy to give as examples. But like, the 10 things you should know about getting promoted, I'll just say, here are the 10 things you should know about getting promoted, and list them on LinkedIn, and give a little bit of details and say, like, I go into much more detail plus some personal stories in my article. Sort of like, if you really, really find this interesting, please keep reading.
So you're one of the rare people I've had on this podcast who optimizes for time efficiency more than growth.
Yep.
So I'm guessing you don't spend a lot of time interacting with you don't have time set aside for answering emails from subscribers and stuff like that. And you probably could diversify your revenue, but it sounds like you're just probably not that interested in it. In that
so
kind of thing.
I have. So I did, after the newsletter was successful, I'm like, man, I have all this attention. What should I do with it? And there's definitely that temptation, but I think a lot of, it's like I fight the temptation, most people definitely don't, of making more money. And so when I started, and I didn't have as much money coming in, I put out in my newsletter that I was available for personal coaching. And so I just said, like, actually, I think the very first thing was someone reached out and said, do you do coaching? And I'm like, of course I do. Yes, I do coaching all the time, which is sort of funny. And they're like, well, how much do you charge? And I'm like, I ran over to my wife. I'm like, okay, how much should I charge? So, being in the tech industry, privilege, et cetera, like lots of caveats, I charged $500 an hour to start. And people paid it. A lot of people paid it until I got my calendar too full. And I was like, now I'm at like almost a full-time job now because of all my coaching. And so, and this is like, again, the same kind of thing, career coaching, interview coaching. I did a lot of like interview practice with various people. And so I raised my rates more and more, but then it became stressful for me of like, someone was paying me $1,000 an hour at some point, and I'm like sitting there in meetings with people who are paying me $1,000 an hour, and I feel bad because I'm like, man, that's a lot of money just to talk to Dave, and I'm really not like I like the money, but I'm not enjoying like the stress behind it. I'm here to write. Why am I trying to make more money? And so I essentially just cancel all of it. So I just stopped like that. That was one thing I did. Another thing I did, which I think is actually super interesting potentially for newsletter people, because I think it was going to work for me, and I just ended up not doing it more, was I told people I don't have time to answer your emails. Like I get a lot of emails with questions, and it's like, hey, I'm running into this problem at work, blah, 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 blah. And my default answer is just like, I don't have time to do that because I'm optimizing for family time and writing. And like that, answering your emails is not family time and writing. But for a while, I had a $100 a month subscription, like a subscription tier, which Ghost offers. I don't think Substack offers. I don't remember if they have a founding tier. Maybe they do have like a founding tier. Member, yeah. So Ghost had all these tiers, and that's how I ended up using it. I did it when I was on Ghost. Was $100 a month, and it was I will answer some short emails from you. That was essentially it. Like I'm available for you as a special high level tier email. It was like email subscriber, I called it. And I shortly there, like I had 14 subscribers, like in not too much time. I mean, that's $1,400 a month that I was getting as a subscription, which is sort of cool. It was like because what I kept thinking of, I spent enough time in marketing at Amazon. I was the general manager, like the manager of the game publishing business. Like I've always interacted a lot with the business teams. And there's always this idea of like tiers, like there's certain kinds of customers, right? Like the free customers, you can't get anything up. But you want to squeeze them can you turn them into a paid customer? So you want to offer something cheap. And that's, I think, paid newsletter subscriptions. I mean, like, especially for the tech industry, they're making $200K a year at least, like for most like mid career people. And the $15 a month is nothing. Like it is just can you click them to click the button? But then you have like, where do you go from there? And for a little bit, that was like, well, I have email subscribers, and then I have paid coaching. Like I can work them up the tiers, the 10x in price at all these different tiers. And so a lot of people seemed enthusiastic about it, but the same thing was like, I was trying to optimize for time investment, and I was thinking, okay, like my newsletter is growing, and I could graph like how much time I was spending answering emails and how much money I was going to make per hour spent writing my newsletter, and pretty swiftly was going to pass and just say like, just writing the newsletter is more efficient. Like if I want to make more money, I should just write a better newsletter. So I ended up canceling all the email subscriptions too. But I really think that that's like for people who want to make more money, who are willing to invest a full-time career in a media content. I think this idea of a subscription where I'm like a little bit available to you is a great way to do it.
But as of right now, the subscriptions are the only way that you make money from
the only thing I have, just paid subscriptions, the end.
And so obviously any subscription business eventually becomes a churn management business as much as it is a growth business. And given that you don't want to spend more than the time to write one newsletter a week, like obviously one thing you could start to grow more would be to create more content or hire people to create content. So then you can keep one of the things you can do is hire more people to create more content or create more content yourself. But as we discussed, that's not something that you want to do. And so I guess like at one point, I'm assuming you hit a ceiling maybe at some point, and now it's just like you're getting new paid subscribers that are replacing the ones that have canceled their subscriptions. Like how do you think about that?
Yeah, I've been the while it varies and it's sort of like in sort of deep waves. I've actually been sort of flatlined for about a year ish. And I've heard that from it's sort of interesting how many, like I talked to a bunch of Substack people and they're sort of, like various people hit that flatline point and they're like, yeah, like and it depends on your level of effort. So I did it a little purposefully. Like I reached this point where I was like, okay, we're paying for our expenses. I have enough money to be retired. Like I literally didn't write LinkedIn content for a while because I'm like, hey, like my newsletter grew bigger than I ever needed it to be. And I spent time, I didn't want to write LinkedIn content. I really don't like writing social media content. And so it was just like, I'm just not going to do it. And the newsletter started shrinking and I was sort of watching it shrink over time. Like, okay, I really do need to do this. So I started writing it again recently. But I flatlined, absolutely. But going to your like ways that you prevent churn. So more content. I don't believe, at least for my type of newsletter, for my a lot of newsletters, I think more is not better. Like there's some people, for example, who say like, I've seen, we send out 2 newsletters a week and you can get 2 more for paid. And I'm thinking like, man, I can barely keep up with your 2 newsletters a week. I have no interest in paying for for more because it already, like I have only a certain, time for reading newsletters every week. And so I write somewhere on the, like I usually check the word count before I post to make sure I didn't mistakenly make it too long or too short, but I regularly write like 3,500 words, like 3,000, 3,500. Like that's a pretty darn, like people sometimes say like, oh my God, you write a book. Like I write a lot. And so I don't think more is better at any way, at least for my kind of newsletter. I think that's enough. Like an article a week, like some people say like, oh man, I have like 6 articles of yours I still haven't gotten to. Like I will get to it eventually, I swear. They print them off for their flights, like their work trips or something. They'll print off a bunch, for example. I've heard a number of people say that. I feel like I should sell like PDFs, like printable PDFs or something. Not a bad idea. So I don't think more is better. And I don't like, I could see a world in which a newsletter flipped to like having other people write. Maybe you could do more guest posts if you want to like, but that's not anti-churn. That's anti-work things. I think anti-churn for the most part is going to be like, are you still writing relevant content? Like that's like one of the biggest things is, can you keep people engaged such that they don't say, because they end up unsubscribing when they're like, the payment pops up in their credit card thing and they think about it and they're like, do I read that all the time still? Or have I started ignoring it? That's the biggest churn thing. Because you could like, with a lot of effort and depending on how engaged they are, you could do more things. So like, Zach, what's his name on LinkedIn? There's a mind blanking on his name, but he's like the data expert guy. I never look at people's last name. Wilson, maybe. But he does like free classes and chats and groups. Like a lot of these content creators will have like a Discord server and stuff like that you can be in if you're a subscriber. And that could definitely hook in people if they really like the social aspect and the community and stuff. But I don't think I'm willing to have a community subscription with having to deal with moderation, getting someone to moderate it for me. Like it would require a level of growth that I'm not interested in. The same thing for like classes. Sometimes people talk about like the way you grow is to have like free classes or paid classes or whatever else, or events, like get 35 people to pay X thousands of dollars to meet. And so all these things are, for the most part, like growth. And I think that in my mind, for only a newsletter, the biggest anti-churn metric is going to be just like keeping your content relevant, making sure it doesn't get stale.
Strikes me that you have like a very large, like a lot of your content is evergreen. Do you do a lot to try to send people into your archives, either paid subscribers or free subscribers? Like I have I have a thing now where every single newsletter I'm linking to a evergreen case study in my archive, and I also now send out a monthly email on the first of every month, like linking to my entire archive. Because one thing I always preach to creators is don't assume that someone who's subscribed to your newsletter is aware of every piece of content you've ever created. In fact,
Yeah.
they're probably not. Do you think about that at all, or is it just the onus on them to go through your archives themselves?
Well, there is. I mean, yes, there is a little bit on them to go through the archives. I would say absolutely. I think about it because I very purposefully, and this is, I mean, that's one of those like purposeful things I thought of from the beginning. Is there's a lot of newsletters that are timely, as in like you read it 3 weeks later already, and it's like like news kind of things, right? You don't want to read I don't know, Tangle is a good one. I like Tangle a lot. I don't know if you do read Tangle. Yeah.
Yeah, you recommended that I write about it, and then I told you.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. So like they're news, right? So if I don't read theirs and when I'm on vacation, I come back. For the most part, I should just ignore their like the old ones because they're news. They're modern news. Then you get to things like Pragmatic Engineer, which is like the top tech newsletter, and his stuff is mostly timely, but it's not super narrow timely. So his content is still good for a few months, but it's like, how did Netflix build their platform? Well, that'll be interesting for 3 months or 6 months. It's not interesting 2 years later because that's not what they did anymore. Maybe we don't build things that way. Then you get to what I would definitely call like just evergreen, which is most of Lenny's newsletter, because that's his is, I don't know, you read Lenny's newsletter, but his is like product management. And most of it is just like, how do you lead companies? How do you discuss things with people? And that's evergreen. Like I can listen to a podcast from him from 3 years ago and it's just as relevant. And a lot of times actually that happens because my podcast reader shuffles things and I'll end up listening to something old. I won't even know. Mention someone's name. I'm like, don't they run this other company? Well, they do, but this is when they were a product manager somewhere else. So I purposely wrote everything evergreen. I have like maybe 10 articles that aren't evergreen. And those are mostly like, here's what I'm doing these days. Once in a while I'll take a break and just like, hey, personal updates. I'm doing this. This is my life. This is finances stuff, like whatever else. It's not quite evergreen. But I purposely made everything evergreen. And a little bit of that was I enjoy writing things that are not changing. And like a lot of leadership and management stuff doesn't change. Like the way we hired, when I joined Amazon in 2007, I started getting into interview loops. And those were not fundamentally different in any way when I left Amazon in 2020. Like they interview people the same way. Most companies like asking questions, do you want them to work with you? Those are going to be the same questions I asked 10 years ago. I mean, I like the idea of what I'm writing is not what's modern. And also I was thinking, if I'm going to be quitting Amazon, how do I write relevant content 3 years later? Well, the only way is if I'm writing about things that aren't like, here's what we do this week. Like, well, I'm not working anywhere. I don't know what we do this week. I'm not going to write about, here's the right way to build something in AI today, because that requires way too much time investment of me into like, how do you do AI development? But here's how you give feedback to someone. Like The Goal is one of the most famous business books ever. And people still read it today. The Goal is about like bottleneck reduction and stuff inside of like, how do you make your team more efficient? People still read it today. Like there's weird examples in there sometimes about like machinists and stuff like that. But people in software development will read The Goal because it really talks a lot about reducing bottlenecks. And that's the kind of content I wanted to write, which is like, I want them to be able to read it 3 years later. I don't point it at them aggressively, partially because I forget what I have also. So I won't I'm not good at being able to link, here's 3 more articles on the same topic. What I have done a few times, and it seems to be really well received, which is interesting, is I'll grab a piece of content that I thought was pretty good or it was on a good topic and maybe not written the best from like 3 years ago. And I will go rewrite the article. So I have the idea already. I have a lot of content. And I'll just go through the whole thing and just retype it in my modern, because I write different than I did 3 years ago. I mean, you write for years, you start to like really come up with different patterns in writing. So I rewrite the whole article and then send it again. And I've had a lot of feedback, like a lot of good feedback, as in like, this is a great article. I love this one. This was like really nailed it. I'm like, man, this like was sent out a few years ago, but everyone loves it. And I just like modernized it and sent it out again. So I think that's an interesting thing to pivot on or think about, is like, if you're writing evergreen content, is like what someone said was like, most of your subscribers are not the same ones from 3 years ago. The way churn works and people's memory works, they won't even remember that it was, even if they were your subscriber. And especially if you're willing to refresh your content and just make sure that it like is up to date and good, like you think it's a good content, there's no reason you can't send it again. And especially if you have like, I have metrics, obviously, like all of us, in terms of like views on that content. Like I'll have things I spent hours on that I sent 3 years ago, and they have 200 views, and I have 70,000 subscribed, like 7,000 free and 2,500 paid. I'll have 150 views on some old articles. I'm like, okay, that's like Google bots or something. Like, that's nothing. So why shouldn't I rewrite that and send it? No one's read it. Like, no one's seen that in so many years. So I'll just rewrite it and send it, and that works really well. And so it's both a way to get content easier, but more importantly is like, I wrote about that topic and I liked it. And I think everyone will like it again. It's just no one's seen it in a while.
And if you're writing something that builds on something you've written about in the past, will you take the few minutes to go find that post and link back to it and stuff like that?
Yeah. I do that sometimes where I'm like, hey, I talked about, I don't know. I'll be writing about how to preparing yourself for an interview, and like, making sure that you're ready for that first interview or something. And I'll be like, okay, first you need to make sure your resume is up to date. Here's my article about getting resumes up to date. I'm not, I'll essentially say like, I'm not going to write this again. Here's the link. And then as you're preparing, you need to do the interview preparation, blah, 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 coming up with your stories. Here's that article I have about coming up with stories for your interview. I'll definitely link out to them if I know I wrote about the topic, because usually I like what I wrote about it and I hate to be repetitive. So I will link to them. I am unimpressed by how many people click through, even if I think it's a very, very valid link. So many people don't. Like the reads, I think the percentage of people clicking, like, I've had some really, really, like, right towards the top of the article where I'm like, here's this really cool article I read yesterday, whatever. And I look at the clicks on the link and it's like, 32. And I'm like, what the heck? Thousands of people read this article and like 32 people clicked on this very relevant link. People just don't click. And so I'm a little hesitant. Like, I'm also a little like, I keep an eye on that kind of thing, because I'm like, okay, if very few people click, I can't also rely on the fact that they read it. So I do toss in some amount of information on the page.
So one of my standard questions is, what would you want to be doing 3 years from now that you're not doing now? But I get the sense that if you were doing the exact same thing now, 3 years from now, you would probably be fine with that.
Yeah. There's this quote by someone, and I don't remember who it was, and apocryphal whatever thing. There was like the billionaire and the poor guy, and it's like, well, or at a party, and like someone says like, don't you wish you had what he had? And it's like, well, I have one thing that he'll never have, which is enough. Like, if you're successful and you get to the point where your newsletter or whatever else is big enough, you can always invest more time, and you can always continue to try to, scramble and do more ways. And there's definitely a need for a lot of people who are starting their businesses and trying to grow their businesses. I 100,000% understand the idea of like, I'm not making enough, or my family, I could save if I could just grow my newsletter another 10% or 20%. But at some point in time, for some people, like, you reach the point, and oh my gosh, like how many people I interacted with at Amazon that are like this, or they're like, they've been a VP for 15 years and they're still like working hard, 60-hour weeks. I'm like, what? Holy crap, dude. Like, there's other things you could be doing. So yes, years from now, I would really enjoy doing exactly this, which is once in a while talking to people like yourself. Like, I like reading your newsletter. It's a lot of fun. I find a lot of interest in it. I like dabbling in marketing and stuff for my newsletter because it's a fun thing to do. I enjoy my writing because it's a fun thing. Like, I enjoy sharing things with people. And otherwise, like, I sort of hope I'm not doing more of the business aspects, because so far I really appreciate most of my week being other things.
Maybe your goal for 3 years from now is to finish one of those novels you started.
Yes. Yeah. To be honest, it would definitely would be, I have a novel have been finished, because I beat myself up over that since I was probably like 18. It's been so many years of considering writing a novel. And I think at some point in time, when you have something that's been on your back your whole life, like for so many years, it is already emotionally and mentally so large that it's a blocker itself in you getting it done, right? It's like, I think about writing and I feel like tense, writing fiction. I get a little tense mentally just thinking about, like, you've tried this literally 100 times. What makes you think that this year you're going to be successful writing?
I think you should do it on Substack. You should start a Substack and just start with short stories, weekly short story, and then turn it into a serialized novel, and then there you go.
Absolutely. I've been thinking about that recently, where it's like, I started writing the newsletter with the idea of like, I need to get into the writing habit. And by building this writing habit, I'll be able to write a novel. And all it did was make me write hundreds of thousands of words on Substack. Like, it was just sort of funny. It's like, I look at the volume of writing I've done, and I could have written many novels by now over the last few years. So it would be a strong argument to say, like, write a weekly fiction newsletter as well. And that would be one way of forcing the fiction writing to happen at the same cadence as the business writing.
Okay, Dave, those are all the questions I have for you. Where can people find you online?
Yeah, I'm at scarletink.com on Substack. If you search for Scarlet Ink, you'll certainly find me. And LinkedIn, I'm Dave Anderson. And I'm pretty much always the top Dave Anderson if you search for me as well.
All right, well, this is a lot of fun. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, it's been great. Thanks so much.